Chapter 1. The Forgotten Path. There was a narrow, unmarked path that led from the edge of the village to the hillside. Most people didn't take it anymore. It was overgrown, a little wild, and for many there was no reason to walk it. There were faster roads, brighter places, and louder attractions. But for Daniel, this path had always held something more than a shortcut. It carried a certain stillness, like a secret. He had discovered it years ago, back when life felt unhurried, when he could sit for hours and wonder about things that had no answers. Now, in his late 20s, Daniel found himself drawn back to it on a quiet evening. His days had been loud lately, meetings that stretched too long, conversations that didn't feel like conversations, and screens that glowed even after midnight. The sun was almost gone as he walked. The sky was melting from orange into deep blue, with the first stars beginning to pierce through. His steps crunched over fallen leaves, and the scent of earth rose around him. He breathed it in slowly, letting the air clear the clutter in his thoughts. At the end of the path, the hillside opened up, and there it was, the old wooden bench. It sat facing the horizon, just where the hill dipped slightly downward, giving a wide view of the fields and the distant village lights. The bench wasn't perfect. Its paint had long faded, and time had carved small cracks into its wood, but it was steady, still waiting. Daniel ran his hand along its surface and smiled. How many nights had he sat here, staring at the stars, dreaming of places far away? Tonight it felt the same, quiet, endless, and patient.
Chapter 2. The First Star. He sat down slowly, like one might greet an old friend after years apart. The wood creaked faintly, a gentle sound against the hush of the evening. Above him, the stars were taking their places. The first one he saw was bright and bold, hanging just above the horizon like a lantern someone had forgotten to turn off. Daniel leaned back, exhaling softly. When was the last time he'd done this? Just sat without a purpose. No phone, no noise, no deadline breathing down his neck. It felt unfamiliar, but good. The night air was cool, brushing softly against his skin. The grass around the bench swayed in a slow rhythm, keeping time with the unseen music of the earth. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered being 18, sitting on this very bench after finishing his final school exams. Back then, the stars felt like promises, tiny glowing things that whispered, "The world is big, and so are you." Somewhere along the way, he had stopped listening to those whispers. Life had become about the next thing, next job, next goal, next achievement. And yet, here he was, with nothing but the night sky asking for his attention. When he opened his eyes, he smiled. The stars didn't care how much time had passed. They were still here, in their quiet brilliance, waiting like old companions.
Chapter 3. A Visitor in the Dark. He wasn't alone for long. Footsteps crunched softly along the path behind him, slow and careful, as though the person walking didn't want to disturb the night. Daniel turned slightly and saw a figure approaching, a woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, with a scarf wrapped loosely around her neck. She stopped a few steps away from the bench, her eyes flicking from him to the stars, and then back to him. "Mind if I sit?" she asked, her voice gentle. Daniel shook his head and moved slightly to the side. "Not at all." She lowered herself onto the bench, leaving a comfortable space between them. For a few moments, neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It felt natural, like they both understood that words could wait. Eventually, she said, "It's been a while since I came up here. I thought I'd be the only one." "Same here." Daniel replied with a small smile. I guess this place still knows how to keep secrets. She chuckled softly, then tilted her head back to look at the sky. It's beautiful tonight. Daniel followed her gaze. The stars were everywhere now, scattered across the deep blue like tiny fires that refused to go out. Yeah, they always are.
Chapter 4. 2 Stories, 1 Bench. Her name was Claire. She used to come here as a teenager too, she told him, when life felt too loud and she needed somewhere quiet to think. I guess it hasn't changed much, she said, brushing her fingers against the bench's rough wood. Except maybe we did. Daniel smiled at that. Yeah, we grew up. Or maybe, she said with a soft laugh, we just forgot how to sit still. They talked in fragments at first, about little things, simple things, the way the night smelled after a warm day, how the wind sounded different up here than in the village, the shape of constellations neither of them could quite name. The stars kept listening. At some point, Claire asked, "Do you ever wonder if life was meant to be quieter?" Daniel thought about it. "All the time," he said finally. "But then I remember, we're the ones who made it loud." She nodded slowly. "Maybe that's why we come back to places like this." And then they fell silent again, watching as a shooting star streaked across the sky like a silver brushstroke. Claire whispered something under her breath, maybe a wish, maybe a prayer. Daniel didn't ask. Some things are better left between a person and the stars.
Chapter 5. The Night That Stayed. Hours passed without them noticing. The village lights below dimmed one by one, and the world grew even quieter. The night wrapped around them like a soft blanket, and for once, neither felt the need to check a clock. Daniel thought about all the nights he had missed because he was too busy chasing something else. He wondered how many more he might lose if he didn't slow down. Claire seemed to read his thoughts. "Funny," she said softly, "how sitting on a bench can feel like living again." He smiled. "Yeah, it's like the stars remind you that everything else can wait." They didn't make promises to meet again. They didn't need to. This wasn't about schedules or plans. It was about the kind of moments that only happen when you stop looking for them. When Daniel finally stood to leave, he took one last look at the sky. It seemed brighter now, as if the stars had noticed. As he walked back down the path, he felt lighter, like he had left something behind on that bench. Or maybe, he thought, he'd found something instead. And high above, the stars kept shining, patient and eternal, over a quiet bench that would always be waiting beneath the night. The end.